Welcome back to the show, the Growth Hacking Culture podcast. Today, we are diving into a crucial and often overlooked aspect of the modern workplace, ADHD. While the conversation around neurodiversity, we have diversity of everything, but we have ways of thinking that are mainly different from one to each other. This neurodiversity has gained momentum. Understanding and accommodating ADHD in professional settings remains a significant challenge. Consider this. Research suggests that around 4.4% of adults have ADHD, a figure that translates to millions of individuals navigating work environments often ill-equipped to support their unique needs. Yet a study by CHAD, Children and Adults with Attention Deficit Hyperactivity Disorder, indicates that a substantial portion of adults with ADHD remain undiagnosed or misdiagnosed, with barriers ranging from stigma to limited access to specialized care. This means a vast pool of talent is potentially underperforming or, even worse, disengaged, not due to lack of ability, but due to a mismatch between the neurotype and the workplace structure. Let me jump ahead and say that this time we have got the perfect fit to discuss about neurodiversity, ADHD. Today, joining us is Shell Mendelson, a career counselor with over 30 years of experience and a unique perspective as she also navigates life with ADHD. Shell's journey is a testament to the power of finding work that truly aligns with your strength. After a series of early career struggles, including her own experiences with mismatched roles, she discovered her passion for helping others. With a master in counseling and an emphasis on career development, Shell has guided over 700 individuals towards fulfilling professional path. And let me tell you something else. Her book is something worthwhile reading. Unlock Your Career Path, a course for ADHD adults and teens. But we are going to be discussing also about that. Shell, it is a pleasure to have you here. We have been already discussing for 15 minutes, and already we started like chit-chatting, like we know each other for years.
For years I've thank you so much. Finally we're being recorded. I feel like we should have been recorded 15 minutes ago, but I'm excited to talk.
That's my fault, Shell. Shell, let's jump to the core of the problem. Do we know how prevalent is ADHD in the workplace? And what are the common misconceptions, misunderstandings that we have about this neurodiversity?
Well, so if you're undiagnosed, so it comes in the form of managers as well, employers, CEOs, executives. Many people who with ADHD actually work for other people with ADHD. Often they're undiagnosed, so you can imagine, ask anybody who's worked for somebody with an ADHD executive or manager. It can be challenging, to say the least. But the diagnosis for me, when people ask me about ADHD, my specialty is career. So I always tell them my background is career, all things career, has been for 35 years. I've worked with, for 20 years, I worked with neurotypical people. And many of them were ADHD, but we didn't discuss the diagnosis. And it was before I was diagnosed, right? And then once I got my diagnosis, I was in my 50s. Once I got my diagnosis, I realized finally why I was having difficulty in certain situations and on the job. It made sense to me. So I like to say I am a career professional that specializes in working with people who are neurodivergent. So that started after my diagnosis. I began just working exclusively with people in what I call our tribe. And it's made all the difference for me. Actually, it's been more fun for me. I really enjoy it. Not that I don't enjoy working with all the neurotypical people out there as well, but there's something special about people that when we understand each other, we
Mm,
understand our little quirks, we understand why we do some of the things we do, how we think. We think differently. There's certain things that are very important for us that if they aren't addressed in the workplace, are going to impact the actual work, right? In other words, if we are using most of the skills that are really important for us to use are what I call our must-have skills, and they need to be used a majority of the workday. And if we're not using them, what you find is what I call leaking that happens on the job site, like maybe missing deadlines or not being as excited, and people trying to fit a square peg in a round hole. That's the description most of us will give ourselves in many work settings. If the employees or the employer doesn't understand how to work with a person with ADHD, which means that they need to be in the right job fit in order for it to benefit both the employer and the employee. And when, by the way, when they are in the right job fit, they exceed and excel every other employee that they have.
mm,
Those are the exceptionally productive, focused people when it's the right fit.
mm,
When it's not, you get all the little nuances, all the little things that will happen, the missed deadlines, the, not showing up because you're sick or whatever, um, being distracted, not all, any number of things will happen. And sometimes not even knowing when it's happening, not being aware. The employees may not even be aware that it's happening. I mean, that's what happened to me. I like to say when somebody would ask me, I hated doing secretarial work, which I did before I got my master's degree. I was always working as a secretary. And they would tell me to go make copies, and collate them. I could never do it. And it's not like not a smart person, but I never could do it right. And the reason realized later was that I just hated the work so much. It wasn't that I couldn't do it. It was just that I really didn't love it. I didn't enjoy what I was doing. There was nothing about it that made me want to collate something perfectly. And I didn't even realize half the time I was making mistakes until I was called out on the carpet. Now, people listening to this with ADHD are going to understand exactly what I'm talking about. You're called out on the carpet, all of a sudden you're up for being in a PIP program because you are missing this, missing that, things aren't fitting together, it's not quite working, and maybe if we do this process, things will get better or you'll make it through and maybe you could. But what I say and what I just told you, Ivan, is that for a person with ADHD, when it's the wrong fit, that's not going to work.
mm,
Nothing's going to work. Put you back. You can try all kinds of things to try and make it work. But if it's the wrong fit, and I'll talk more about what the right fit might look like, but when it's the wrong fit, it's not going to solve any problem in terms of the person with the neurodivergent person, the person with ADHD. And when I say neurodivergent, I mean all the different brain wiring diagnosed people out there, including odd HD, which is autism and ADHD, and people that are on the autistic scale and or spectrum and are brilliant at their work, but if it's the wrong fit, they're not going to be brilliant at their work.
mm.
It's not going to look the same.
Shell,
Yeah.
there is a lot of misconceptions. When you were telling me your personal story, if I pick some elements, for instance, lack of focus, it's normal. People have lack of focus. I don't want to do it perfectly. It is normal. So, but and that's the reason why a lot of people misunderstand ADHD, because it's not like I pick one symptom on one outcome, and that defines HSD. It is something else. Would you be able to explain me what else it is? Is it the accumulation, the repetition, the sequence of these symptoms that are recurrent, or is there something more that is happening in the head of a person who has a different type of wiring?
Well, again, I'm going to come back to this. If they're in the wrong, if it's the wrong fit and they don't know how to articulate or understand what the right fit is for themselves, they will try and fit themselves into literally anything that they have, that they might have the skills to do those things. They may even have the education, wrong education, but the education to do those things. They may have experience doing certain things, and they can tick off all the elements of the job description that would make them seemingly good employees until they get on the job. And then if it's not the right fit, and there's so many elements to it not being being the right fit, and that would mean people, co-workers, for example, who they can't relate to or who think there's some, are judging them all the time. If there's a lot of judgment going on, if there's misunderstanding, and if they need, for example, to get, and tell me if I'm not answering your question, but if they need to have instructions either written down or very clearly given to them on a project, if there's any fogginess about what those instructions need to be, then you're going to probably get some pushback, resistance, and maybe the right product or whatever is not going to happen. There'll be problems that spring up. And that would be something that would many of us need to have very explicit instructions, very clear instructions. And we have to feel free to ask questions. And there are some people work in employment situations where they don't want to answer questions. It's like a bother or whatever to have to answer questions. But if you can't ask a question to clarify a task that you're asking that employee to do, then you may not get what you want from that employee. And I'll give you I like to give my own examples when you ask these things about people with ADHD, because I am one of them. When I was working for my very first company where I was doing work I loved, it was the first actual professional job I had. And I really enjoyed it. But I was working for a corporation. And one of the things we had to do weekly was this form, I just call it the form, that I would look at it and I would say, what does this have to do with my work? It has nothing to do with my work, and it doesn't help me get my job done. So I would literally ignore the work, ignore the form, until my manager came in and said, Shell, why aren't you filling out this form? That's part of what the company requires. And I just looked at her, and by that time, I knew I had one over on them because I was really good at my job. I was building a clientele for them. I was making them money. So I had some leverage, right? And I think when we're in the right fit, we have some leverage, right? They very often will accommodate us. And I was accommodated with me being completely undiagnosed, completely. And I said, look, I'm not going to do the form. It doesn't pertain to me. It's not relevant. And I'm sorry, but I'm not going to do it. She walked out the door and never asked me to do it again.
That's good.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not trying to imply that these things. So I also I'll give you the other side of that. When I work with I didn't work with, but I had a question asked by an engineer who led a team of engineers at a state. It was a state department. And he said, I have one engineer who's probably my best engineer with ADHD, and I can't get her to fill out this form. And no matter how hard I try, I can't get her to do it. And I say, how necessary is it? Well, it's a state. So of course they're a little bit more bureaucratic. They absolutely have to have that form filled out. So I said, here's what you do. You're the manager, right? I said, how about if you schedule 10 minutes every week and you sit with your engineer and you fill out the form together? You
mm.
just go through each thing. And he looked at me and he said, wow, that makes sense. I can do that. So there you have it. That's another accommodation
Well,
for a valued employee, right? A valued employee. Yeah.
indeed. So, to help me define a little bit how is the brain of a person with ADHD, in fact, if I understand you correctly, when it's a task when it is going into a process that people have to follow, people needs more clarity about the process. When it's creative or unstructured task that requires creativity, that's another story because they can thrive on that. But for processes that they have to follow, they need explicit.
Deadlines. Most
Exact.
of us need, I love deadlines. Give me a deadline any day. And I'll get it done 2 days early. I mean, I prefer, here's what needs to get done. Here's and very clear instructions. And then I need a deadline for when it needs to get done by. And
Mm,
that will make all the difference in the world. If you just leave it up to us to sort of, if it's something we can really dive into and we get to use our creativity to do a project or to work on something, to strategize. There's different ways of being creative in our, like in the corporate world, it's not always about art, right? It's about strategizing. It's about brainstorming. It's about coming up with ideas, that for how to get things done and offering solutions. We're very solution oriented. We
yeah.
love to systematize, we create systems. We love, so many of us, and I'm not saying every single person, but almost everyone I work with, there's some form of just using creativity in a way that really allows, that we enjoy, in a way that we personally enjoy.
Mm,
But we've identified the ways in which we enjoy it. And we love to initiate, um, when under the right circumstances. Um, we actually do like to lead under the right circumstances. So it really needs to be a clarifying thing for the employee. They need to be able to articulate what they need and what's important to them so that they are put in the right situation and their employer knows where to put them.
mm,
But that's a whole other, that's what I do, and that's what I help people with, to help them articulate what it is that they want and need in their work first, so that then they can express to an employer without even saying I have ADHD,
mm,
but instead saying, under these circumstances, I will thrive. Under these circumstances, I will be focused. I will be project oriented. I will get the work done, and I'll get it done maybe in record time.
mm,
And so many things work so well when we understand what we want and need in our work as individuals with ADHD. But when we don't have that understanding, it's very confusing. And it's like generally we're on the defensive of always trying to uh, fit ourselves, the square peg in the round hole, and pretend. And for those of you with ADHD listening to this, you understand the term masking. We have to pretend that we are somebody we're not.
mm,
We can't be ourselves when we are trying to fit the square peg in a round hole.
mm,
We can't be who we really, really are. And if you're doing that day in and day out, you're not really allowed to be you. It can have serious repercussions after a period of time. So you do need to be put in situations where you can be more of who you are, more of yourself. And like for me, I always tell people what you see is what you get. This is me. I'm gonna be crude. I'm gonna be, I'm just gonna laugh. I love humor. I have to have some fun.
mm,
I don't tease people, but I like to share, my experiences and see their reactions. And sometimes I share some crazy experiences. But that's me. I have to be me. So being able to know who you are and to be able to say, these are the traits of myself that I need to use and be able to use in my workplace, or I'm going to be little by little, it's going to take a toll. And that's when the employer is going to start to notice. And that's when the manager is going to start to notice. And that's when you get called on the carpet, all those things. Anyone listening to this with ADHD has been in that situation, knows exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah, but the problem is this, that, and I mentioned it early on in the introduction. So this famous number, 4.4 of people, adult people have ADHD. What do you think? Bullshit or not?
No, it's probably more like 7%.
Oh,
It's higher than that.
X.
Oh, so many
People don't
undiagnosed
know.
people running
Don't-
around.
People don't know, Shell, and that's the real
Yeah,
the real problem, right?
it is. I think because once you get the diagnosis, it makes all the difference in the world. It really does. Then it explains things like why the work that you're doing is the wrong work.
Mm,
It explains why you're having issues because we have to enjoy the work we're doing. There has to be an element of enjoyment there and fulfillment. And we are typically very purpose-driven people. So if we can't find purpose in our work, day in and day out, we could run into problems. If the purposing is big for most of us with this brain wiring. That's why I emphasize it. And when people really understand that, it gives them a lot more understanding of the kind of work they need to be doing, right? Uh, and the kind of projects they need to undertake. So it can make a big difference when you're working, say, on a team and the project you're working on, what your role is. So understanding the roles that really work for you with your brain wiring are really, really important. But when you ask the typical person, and I'm talking neurotypical, I'm talking literally everyone, what it is that you really want in your work. What do you want your work to include? Very few people can articulate that.
mm. But here's the
Very few.
question, Shell. Do
Yeah.
these people needs to have certain type of counselor? Do they need career coaching in order to,
Yes.
because it's already difficult, even when you don't have these challenges, to find out what the hell do you want to do in life. I imagine that when you are neurodivergent, it could be even more challenging.
Well, of course, the answer is yes. Of course, they need a career counselor with ADHD, who knows what they're doing. They need a professional who's focused on career, right? That's my background. Again, I'm not an ADHD professional. That's not my role. There's so many other people out there who can speak to what ADHD is, how the brain wiring works. I always talk about it within the context of my own experiences, my clients' experiences, and work and career. So try and keep it within that framework. Um, but yeah, of course you need to understand, and that's why I do the work I do and why it's so important and so few people do it. I always cheer the people. I give them big congratulations for like taking the step to go through this process to really understand themselves and what they want and need in their work. It's just a whole other world that opens up at that point to, oh my gosh, no wonder. Usually that's the thing. No
Mm,
wonder I was miserable for so long you know and some people with ADHD can fake it till they make it. They can fake it
mm,
for years, and then it shuts down. There's always a point where it stops, a point where you get up and you go, why am I doing this? I can't stand it anymore. I can't do it. And yeah, you drag yourself to work, and then all of a sudden the work becomes almost impossible to do. And that's the extreme version, but it leads to burnout. Right. So I'm not an expert on burnout. There are people I know that are with ADHD who are experts on burnout. But I know that when people get to that point, it's not good for anybody. It's not good for the employer. It's not good for obviously the employee. And that's why I always tell people with ADHD, at some point you may want to take your show on the road and become self-employed. like you, Ivan.
Hmm.
All the podcasters I talk to, I go, look, are you working for somebody? And they're like, no.
No, exactly.
What is that? But yeah, so I mean, but if people really do feel like they need to be in a job or work for a company or whatever, then there are ways to create a situation where it's a win-win for everyone. Uh, but also the thing that they need to understand is when that companies are moving all the time. There's movement to companies. So people are leaving, companies are acquired, the situation shifts, the job role might change a little bit. When all that happens, it can wreak havoc on the ADHD brain. If it happens very quickly, if it ha they're not prepared in any way. Some people might be able to weather the storm, but if they're all of a sudden put into a role that says, now you need to do this, and it's not the one that fits them, what do you think's going to happen at that point? Yeah.
It is quite powerful what you have mentioned, and we are unaware about that, about the ultimate consequence of not of being in a position in a role that doesn't fit is burnout. The level of stress that you have to live to go through in order to fake it is immense.
It's too much. It's too much. It becomes so overwhelming after a while. And I mean, we don't do well. People with ADHD, we are people when you talk about blurting, sometimes we'll blurt things out. I always can tell when I'm talking to a person with ADHD. We just laugh about it, right? Um, we laugh about it. Some people hide it better than others, but you're just hiding it. You want to be in a situation where you don't have to do that, where you really can get the work done, be productive, enjoy what you're doing, be focused, have it be fun and fulfilling on different levels. But if you don't know what those things are, what those elements are, and can I just quickly tell you what they are from my perspective?
Yes,
They
please.
are, yeah. So when I work with people, we go through the your next career move, career defining process. And we create what's called the career galaxy. Okay, so we have 7 planets, and each planet represents a different element of what makes up we go all the way to ideal work. So that you prioritize what I call your must-haves. Those elements that absolutely need to be the top 5 to 10 need to be in the work you're doing. This is for you to do your very best work, okay? For you to 100% enjoy what you're doing. So the first one are skills. I don't talk about strengths. I talk about what are those transferable skills that you really enjoy using.
Mm.
And I have lists and lists of uh, skills that they tick off the ones that apply to them. I have them write stories first. It's a whole thing so that we can acquire the skills or go through the process of identifying what those skills are and then prioritizing them. And then it's often shocking to people when they see what their top skill is. Just yesterday, a participant said, I was shocked to see that my very top skill is investigative. I love investigating, which translates to problem solving, which translates to, all kinds of, you can use different words for the same thing. But she said, I was shocked. I had no idea. And usually people are shocked when they see what their very top skill is. The second one are the people that you prefer, the characteristics of the people you prefer to work with and or for. Who are those people? What are those characteristics? They're people who, and then you identify what those things are. And all of us know that when we are working with certain kinds of people who have certain kinds of characteristics, we don't name names, we name characteristics. That if they're way at the bottom or they don't even exist in your must-haves, then there could be problems. there could be some issues. We might have some issues. So that we define those. And the next thing are the working conditions. And this is where the employers really want to take notice of the conditions under which people with ADHD and neurodivergent people in general thrive. And so that's maybe where employers are more sensitive to, oh, I notice when I put them in this situation, or I give them this kind of a desk or this kind of equipment, or I put them in an office, they can get more done, or they can come out and talk to people, maybe work at do a project at a coffee shop or from home like that, or it's a hybrid kind of situation so that they can get things done at home, then come in and work with a team or whatever. People just need to identify what those conditions are for themselves and the kind of company that they find most supportive. Like the company culture is important to a lot of people, but it varies per person. Each person's different. So some people might be better in a more conservative company. Other people might need a more relaxed environment. Very few people like the open, seating
Yeah, open
where
space.
they're so distracted and
Mm.
they have no privacy. The lack of privacy is usually a big thing with us. Um, so those are just some examples of working conditions. And also I say there's physical conditions and there's non-physical. The non-physical are things like diversity in the company. Is that important to you? Is it a, a company that believes in providing clear instructions to their employees? Like, or do they just expect you to figure it all out? Hours of work are really important to many of us. So those are things that have to be defined by the individual, and they have to be honest with themselves about it.
Mm.
Because if they're not honest, and again, it's fitting yourself, it's pretending, it's masking, you're going into that situation and you're not being honest about what really is going to work for you, it's going to break down at some point. So we create this whole, what I call self-accommodation plan, where you can figure it out, a lot of this out on your own without even talking to anyone, just sort of arranging things in a way that's going to work for you. And then the parts that you need to get some help with, you can couch it again. And under these conditions, is it possible to have these conditions so my work product will improve?
Mm.
So I can I can be more focused in what I'm doing. And I know when I have like good lighting, or there are different things that are really important to people. And those of us with ADHD do have sometimes physical sensitivities of sight, sound, hearing, there's sensory issues. So those things are important to be able to talk about with the employer to see that there are ways that they can kind of, if they have to work at home because maybe there's going to be a lot going on any particular day, and they have a project they can work on at home. I don't know, it's just different for everybody. But those, again, they need to identify that. And then the next thing is, which goes into actually looking at career options, which may not be with that employer, but could be a lateral move of some kind.
Mhm.
Um, and I just talked to somebody who said, my employer really values me and wants me to be happy, so I'm going to be doing this to find the lateral move for myself within the company. And they want to help them figure that out because they know they value that person, and they know under the right conditions that person's going to thrive. So the fourth planet is about subjects, special knowledges, fields, and industries.
Mm.
So you're looking at what are the right fields, industries, subjects you want to be pursuing. For example, my foundation or industry is education. It doesn't mean I work within the educational system here in Texas. It means I educate, like everything I do is educating. It's about educating. It's about uplifting people with information, providing information and supporting people. And coaching is education. So it falls within that. Um, within that foundation. So that is what the fourth planet is about. It can get pretty meaty at that point, and then people get to speak with people who are doing things that they're interested in. So it's an eye opener. It's very much of an eye opener. And then the fifth one is rewards and benefits. So they get to really understand what those need to be, including how much money they need to make to pay their bills and live a decent life. You know, if people don't have that basic understanding, how are they going to be able to negotiate their salary or really understand what they need to make? Because if they're not making enough, they're not going to be happy and it's going to show up on the job, right? And that's true probably for most people, but for us, it's key. It really is key. Because when we're distracted because of those things, we can't fake it. Again, most of us can't fake it very well. And then we talk about geographical, which is where you want to live uh, in a way that will support you. You know, the places that would support you living. Is your current environment the one? And if it's not, how can you make it better? Or do you need to actually physically move to like a different city or something like that, so that it's what your environment is supporting you? So it has to do with your entire environment. And then the last piece, the biggest piece I like to say, is the life purpose.
Mm.
That's where you really understand how to serve. And if you are serving, and it doesn't mean your work is your life purpose, but it needs, whatever work you do absolutely needs to align with that purpose in some way.
Mm.
Yeah, I won't go into all the details of that, but those are the things that we explore, and where you create your career galaxy and you have all the information in front of you and you can sift and sort opportunities very easily from that. And and if you explore what's available with your current company and you have a way to match up using that, what the right fit would be.
Mm. Is there, like, once you have someone has understood all this amount of information, and I like that it's quite structured.
Very
This
structured.
approach
Yeah.
is, you have the information, you have explored options, but suddenly there is the internal fear of speaking about a condition that you
Yeah.
might be judged, even though they will not tell you straight ahead. They will be saying, "Oh, this project is not for Ivan because
Yeah.
he's not focused enough." Or they will call it whatever they want to call it. Is that a challenge that people that ask your help also face, this fear of speaking up about their
I
condition?
like to say that people that work with me, the very first meeting is deer in the headlights, because it's all about fear. You
Mm.
know, is this going to work for me? Is it, I'm too afraid. People will not even, well, the first thing I put, if you look on my website, is too many ideas, right? You saw that. Everybody says that. I've got so many ideas, right? But they taken one step toward even one idea that they have?
Yeah.
Have they even Googled something that's one of their ideas? Have they done, like, I use this app called Perplexity, which is so much fun. You guys try it. You can ask anything. And have you perplexityed it to ask about what it is, or more about it? And most people will say no because they're too scared. And that's where we go into the safekeeping self. Did you
Mm.
hear? Yeah, you must have read a little bit about that. So that is actually, it's actually kind of a psychological condition, or it's an emotional, physical, and psychological condition that prevents us from taking steps, that stops us out of fear, uh fear is generally the biggest one. But feeling stupid, like what will people think, caring too much about others'
Mm.
feelings, that's a big one. What will my spouse think? What will my friends think? What will my partner think? What will my relatives think? You know,
Mm.
um, everybody tells me I should be doing this. all those little noisy voices that you hear in your head. So I tell people I'm going to put you in what's called the career bubble, and you can't speak with anybody about as you're going through this process that I just identified. You can't speak with anyone about it because the second you get a pause, an eye roll, or a yes, but from somebody, it will throw you off your game entirely. So
Absolutely.
I just say you need to completely be free to explore what is right for you 100%. And it's kind of like putting remember I said the gas, you've got to put the mask on first to help the person next to you or the younger child or whatever. This is the same thing. When you put your mask on, or your gas mask, I should say, your oxygen, give yourself oxygen, give yourself room to grow and explore without somebody else's opinion, without others' voices popping in. And the safekeeping part is a part where it doesn't even have to be a human being, it's just a voice that comes in your head.
Mm.
And you might want to ask yourself, who is that? You know, where did that come from? Well, it comes from years of hearing people's opinions and being kind of bought into other people's opinions. It's not an easy thing to overcome. And so we do talk about that and we do address that. That's a very big piece of what I do. I'd say that's one of the biggest pieces because people kind of have a sense very often of where they need to go, but they're so afraid because of all the voices and all what'll so and so think? They're too afraid to disappoint somebody, to not please somebody. And that's what stopped them all along.
Mm.
And when you have, I mean, my brother is such a good example. He's a musician. He wants to do everything. He's been a musician his whole life. And he's a composer. He's a conductor. He's like brilliant. He went to a New England Conservatory, got his master's there. He played in symphonies all over the world. Um, and as he got older, he found it more difficult to, find different ways to use his music in his work or whatever. I tried to help him. He wouldn't listen. He's my brother. It's like, no, you can't help me. I could have helped him, but he didn't want it. Family, they don't want to hear from you. So, things, got to the point where they had to make money, he and his wife, and they ended up driving a truck. And I mean, they made a lot of money. They were able to buy a house. But now I told you what's happened. It was because of the stress of that.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
So that's a perfect example of not doing at least a portion of the thing that you've got some real energy behind and
Mm.
experience in. There were ways that he could have brought his music into different things or brought into elements of the skills he developed over the years without necessarily having to go on these auditions or being in an orchestra. It wasn't just one thing. There are many things that he could have done that we could have explored together.
Mm.
But if that now that's all he should be doing. And I just pray that everything's okay and he gets to go back home and stop doing what he's doing and focus on his music and take all that music he's composed and put it into some kind of an archive and actually use it for good, use it in a way that will serve other people.
Indeed.
Yeah, I'm getting off topic. But basically that's the idea of when you stop listening you start feeling the influence of other people.
Mm. Shell, you made
Yeah.
me think about there is a lot of ignorance about what it is, ADHD. Professors. So, in fact, educational people should know about it, but they don't know. They don't understand what is
Yeah.
a person, for instance, a child who is um, on focus or a little bit terrible, speaking up all the time. And they cannot differentiate that between a condition and somebody just as a standard, a normalized child. And even people with education at work, if you talk about it, they will give you the most stupid, irrelevant advices.
Right.
And so you are right when you say nobody should listen specifically if it is about your brain, how you learn the best. Nobody can
Yeah,
advise you. They are not in the
nobody.
same brain. So what's the
And
point?
also, you do need to, the people with ADHD need to understand what their best options are for themselves. They really
Mm,
do need to be able to articulate that
mm,
and what conditions they need. And all the things that I mentioned, those things need to be understood by the individual first. And when they understand it, they can communicate it. And it might even be that we, as a group of people with of neurodivergent people, have are able to articulate to others versus them trying to figure us out. Maybe we need to be the ones to educate and say, this is how I work best, without even saying you have autism or ADHD. You don't have to tell them that. I
mm,
I I don't think that it's necessary to disclose that you have ADHD in every situation. If you are in the right job, if it's the right fit, you don't have to do that. I never, like I said, my employer, I didn't know I had it. It wasn't even a conversation by anyone in the olden days, but they accommodated me because I was I was a star employee. I was a person who was doing like the work without even thinking, this is what I love doing. So I did it and I did it well. Right. So when under those circumstances, there's no need to talk about your brain wiring. There really isn't. For people that really see the potential in their employees and but kind of understand who are neurotypical, they see understand some of the characteristics. It's probably good to read through what some of those characteristics are. If you suspect that a person might be neurodivergent, and to understand what some of those characteristics are, and see if it fits, and not for you to make a diagnosis, but maybe that person is undiagnosed. There's so many things, but there are ways to just understand, just know this under the right conditions. So
mm,
maybe it's asking questions like, is this environment working for you? What environment will work best for you to get your work done? What
mm,
under what conditions? It goes both ways. So the employee would say, under these conditions, because now they know they've gone through this process that I do with people. Now they know they can say, under these conditions, I can get this done, I can do this, I can do this, uh, and be very specific about it, more specific than probably ever any other employee they've had. They can be very specific.
mm,
And on the employer's end, they could maybe read up a little bit if they suspect and think, well, is this person in the right position?
mm,
Is there another position this person? And ask questions that have to do with the conditions.
mm,
So that would be how they can help. Yeah.
mm. Shell, one last question, and it's about your book. I wanted to ask you, this book, Unlock Your Career Path, a course for ADHD adults and teens, is it? So an adult and a teen can read it. A 14 years old can read it. Is that
Yeah.
correct?
It's for teen.
Oh,
Yes, it's written very, somebody said it's written so almost like an eighth, a seventh or eighth grader could do it. Actually, this is a better copy. No, I still have coffee stain. I love coffee, so I have coffee stains. I
oh.
changed it to neurodive. Oh, this is the original one. Sorry. This is the one that's the new title. A
Yes.
course for neurodivergent. I changed ADHD because I work with everyone.
Mm,
Mostly, I would say maybe 85% ADHD. So
okay.
most of the people I work with are ADHD. But they also have, like I said, dual diagnosis very often.
Mm.
Anxiety, almost everyone has that
Oh,
diagnosis.
yeah. Yeah. Mm,
Yeah.
mm,
So, under what conditions do you get anxious? Do you get stressed? So those are important things to address in the workplace. Um, and I mean, the good news is for the employer that when it's the right fit, you have the best employee in your whole company. You have the best employees.
Exactly. So let me tell you. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to put the link below this video recording for the book, because I think it's pretty obvious that if it is practical and not so much dwelling into the theory, but more into how to figure it out, but how to make it work.
Every HR department should have a stack of these books for their employees that,
Yeah.
let's get you and get the right fit here for you, go through this process. But they need, it's good if they're working in a group to keep them accountable. They need accountability to do it. Or you can send them to me, and go through the process, and they'll come back clear, focus. And if it's not the right company, they'll be the one to say, maybe I need to go. That could
Mhm.
save you a lot of time and energy. Maybe, but now I have some options for myself. I feel confident that I can move on. I'm not crushed, because I've been in the wrong job. I just know that it was not a good fit for me. So it's a whole different dynamic when a person comes back and says, maybe this isn't the right place for me. Maybe I can carry on doing this work with a few changes, but while I can still do your company some good, make a few changes. But in the meantime, I'm exploring this other option, so it's not going to be like ongoing forever. Um, and they'll know what it is. The confidence level, that's the biggest thing that people come away with is confidence.
Mm.
The biggest thing. I'm
I'm
so
going
proud of
to be
that's
then putting also the link to your website, passiontocareer.com, and also your LinkedIn profile. Is there anything, any other way that they can reach you out other than these two, LinkedIn and your website?
Well, so you'll notice on my website it says schedule an intro call with Shell everywhere. So that's what you want to do. Schedule an intro call with me and I will talk to you, because I'm training other people now to carry on the work, because I'm getting up there and I want the message out there to the world. People need to understand how incredibly important this work is. Um, so I'm training other people besides myself, to carry on. So anybody listening who is a teacher or a coach who may want to think about getting some training to carry this work on, it's a great business. And anyway,
Yeah,
yeah, they can just schedule the intro call with me, click on that, and it will go to my Calendly and we can talk.
that's good. Shell, I just have to say from the bottom of my heart, because this has been a very personal discussion because I feel close to the topic. I wanted to thank you not only for your knowledge, but also for the love, passion for humanity, because I don't think that it's not passion for HDD people. No, no, it's for humanity.
For
I
human
yes.
for humanity, it really, and I've always been purpose driven my whole life. Um, I've always been about service, being of service. And um, yeah, my work is, and I've been shy about sort of getting the word out there as much as I am now on podcasts. By the way, I love doing these podcasts because I just get to be myself and I get to talk about something I love. It's like, who knew,
And you got someone who is also wanted to learn about the topic. Thank you, Shell.
Yeah.
Thank you very much
Thank
for spending time with me and with my audience. Have an excellent day.
It was such a pleasure. Such a pleasure, Ivan. Thank you.